I wake to sleep and take my waking slow. I feel my fate in what I cannot fear. I learn by going where I have to go. We think by feeling. What is there to know? I hear my being dance from ear to ear. I wake to sleep and take my waking slow. Of those so close beside me, which are you? God bless the ground. I shall walk softly there and learn by going where I have to go. Light takes the tree, but who can tell us how? The lowly worm climbs up a winding stair. I wake to sleep and take my waking slow. Great nature has another thing to do to you and me. So take the lively air and, lovely, learn by going where to go. This shaking keeps me steady. I should know what falls away is always and is near. I wake to sleep and take my waking slow. I learn by going where I have to go.
But for some odd reason, they had a copy of Roethke's collected poems there. And Roethke at that point was no more than a name to me. I don't think I even knew really his anthology pieces, you know, the big poems that everybody knows. And I picked him up and I read him, and you know, I'd like to say that I was moved by the dark and ambitious poems, you know, The Lost Sun and Far Field and things like that. But I was immediately taken by the Greenhouse poems. And what interested me most in the Greenhouse poems was that they didn't have to be about anything more than what they were about. I suppose if somebody had to sit down and write papers for high school or college, they could try to put big meanings in those Greenhouse poems. But what moved me is that they were just celebrations of that particular place and that particular time and that particular moment. And that was all that was necessary for the poems. Certainly the language of them was extraordinary, but it didn't have to be. And I remember reading this first little poem, Cuttings, and just being bowled over by the fact that it wasn't about anything more than making flowers. So here's the poem, all 8 lines of it that I remember from 25 years ago in the south of France. Cuttings. Sticks in a drowse droop over sugary loam, their intricate stem fur dries, but still the delicate slips keep coaxing up water. The small cells bulge. One nub of growth nudges a sand crumb loose, pokes through a musty sheath its pale, tendrillous horn. A plant coming out of the dirt, that's it. And I'm just going to write a poem about that. You know, later on.
Theodore Roethke believed a poet should be as big a guy in town as the banker. At the time of his death in 1963, Theodore Roethke had won more awards for his poetry than any other poet in America, including the Bollingen Prize, the National Book Award, the Pulitzer Prize. However, the poet said of himself that he was a teacher first and then a poet, and during most of his adult lifetime, his reputation backed this up. Students of his included many luminaries in modern poetry like Richard Hugo, Carolyn Kaiser, Tess Gallagher, David Wagner, and James Wright, who went on to win a Pulitzer Prize in poetry himself. Here at the Saginaw County Historical Museum, Roethke's accomplishments are celebrated alongside dozens of other prominent Saginawians.
What I noticed the most about him is the celebration of small natural animals. Not domestic, not really wild, but the animals that you simply see when you go out into the river country or walk in the fields and so forth. This is a short one, but very strong, the premonition. Walking this field, I remember days of another summer. Oh, that was long ago. I kept close to the heels of my father, matching his stride with half-steps until we came to a river. He dipped his hand in the shallow. Water ran over and under hair on a narrow wrist bone. His image kept following after, flashed with the sun in the ripple, but when he stood up, that face was lost in a maze of water.
Roethke's interest in poetry included the works of John Donne, John Clare, and Andrew Marvell, written in the 16th and 17th centuries, as well as the poetry of his contemporaries, including Louise Bogan and Stanley Kunitz, with whom he formed lasting friendships. Roethke read a variety of poetry, some of it obscure and hard to find, and he read a lot. His passion for the stuff was so great, he created and implemented what would become a famous poetry writing class. He called it verse form. The year was 1943. Roethke was 35 years old and teaching at Bennington College in Vermont.
The students, inundated by vast surges of Ted's vitality, came to think of lyric poetry as the most important human activity, and they tended to let their other work slide so that they could labor over a poem that Ted might find acceptable or even praise. One of my students was also taking verse form, and I asked her, "Why do you write such lousy short stories for me and such good lyrics for Ted?" She said soberly, "I'm afraid he'll hit me." Alan Seeger.